Hey there, Aaron Wills again, bringing you another reaction video. I started this on Sunday, the 25th day of August in 2024 at 3:35 p.m. Along with welcoming you to my channel, please allow me to thank you for watching. Please comment, like, and subscribe before sharing this video and turning the post notification bell on. Alright. I'm going to choose, I don't know which one to choose here. We got body cam videos, police cars, legal cases. I don't know what that is, but it doesn't sound real interesting. Let's search. Abby Emmons. Let's see what she has to say in her latest video. There's me when I watch my videos back. I have to search for me. Fawlty Towers free episodes. I was watching that when I decided to make this video. Abby Emmons. Let's see what she's got going on. Abby Emmons is another author tuber. She wrote a very good book called 100 Days of Sunlight. I really liked the book. I loved the book, to be quite honest. That was a fantastic book. She wrote a sequel to it also. I'm not sure the exact name. But it's the two characters, so-and-so and so-and-so, the best Christmas ever, I think it's called. I forget the names of the two characters, though. I don't know. Hey, Google. What's the sequence to 100 Days of Sunlight called? It's a sequence. I meant sequence. Hey, Google. What's the sequel of 100 Days of Sunlight?
These are the top results.
Which top results? Just answer my fucking question, whore. Here we go. We got Abby Emmons right here. That's Abby. Let's see what she has to say lately. I'm subscribed apparently right there. Make your story matter. Alright. Let's see if I can find a video of her. World building. World building. That won't even. Doesn't sound bad dialogue. See now, what is a video about dialogue? Because I consider dialogue to be my jam. I've written one book, and I'm working on my second. I think my dialogue is the best part. In both books, I write very good dialogue. And from what I understand, dialogue is showing and not telling. Let's see, what you got going here? Bad dialogue, what is this? What is that? What is this?
Just give me this.
I guess we'll be watching this.
Right? And so when they see action, like the characters doing something, and then dialogue.
That's the Kate and Abby podcast. Kate is on the left, that's Abby's sister, and these two are sisters. And they do a podcast all about writing. Apparently Kate is a writer as well. I haven't watched their podcast or listened to their podcast, so I don't know. But I think Kate and Abby are both writers. I know for sure Abby's a writer. Let's see. Here we go. Let's hear what they have to say.
they're connecting those two things together.
Right, and I
And
like
I'm
to
so
kind
used
of
to seeing that you make those connections all the time.
Right, and I like to kind of think of it in terms of like when you're watching a film and you're seeing maybe a character carrying a box into a room, they're talking as they set the box down. You're just seeing, you're hearing the words, you're seeing the action. And so when you, in your writing, you can say that again, James drops his suitcase. We're almost seeing that in the same way like we would with a movie. Like, okay, he's carrying something in, he's saying something as he sets it down. We don't even need to know he said because we see that he's saying it.
Right.
So you can pepper in tags as you see fit. Obviously, you do want to use some tags.
This is about dialogue tags. When to use them, when not to use them, I guess. I've heard a lot of people, a lot of author tubers talk about when it's too often, when you use your dialogue tags too often or not often enough, how it affects the story. That's what they're talking about now, dialogue tags. Like he said, she said. That's a dialogue tag.
You don't want no tags to be there. But like Abby's saying, you don't need it every time. And you can actually look at, okay, what makes sense here? Do I understand who's talking? Maybe I can cut straight to the action and let that imagery just flow.
Right.
And then in the very beginning here, can't believe we've made it at last, I remark. So we were able to change I say to I remark because it is a remark. That's one of the things that is helpful too, is to ask yourself, what actually is this? Are they saying it? Is it a remark? Are they making a comment? And if it is, they're remarking on something, just say, I remark.
Right.
Literally by just asking yourself, what is the mood of how they're saying this? Is it just like a remark they're making? Then we can say that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can sound clunky if we say I remark when it's not really a remark. It's actually just speaking directly to something or someone. But if it's just kind of talking to the room, making...
That's very common, I guess. Not common, but it's very popular, I guess. Lately, I don't know if it's always been popular, but lately, writing in first person present tense is very popular. I walk across the room. Bob knocks on the door. I walk across the room. I open the door. I invite Bob in. Bob comes in. We start fucking. No, whatever. Let's just get the point across. First person present tense. I've never tried to write that way. I might try to write something that way. I've never written in first person either. I've always written in third omniscient, third person omniscient. I've always written that way. That's how I prefer to write. I've never written a first person. I might try to write something in first person. Maybe even try to write something in first person present tense. Well, let's see what they're saying.
A comment, then it makes sense to really ask yourself, what exactly is this? How exactly are they saying this? What inflection is being used? And just use that word.
Yeah.
So number 2, too much back and forth. Do you want to kind of speak to this?
Yeah, this can get really annoying and repetitive after a while, especially fatiguing to the brain because you lose track of what is happening. So you've probably seen this in books or in any story that has a lot of dialogue that is not very well written. Will go back and forth, usually between two characters, sometimes between more than two characters, in a way that is almost like this pointless tennis match of words where we're not getting any further in the conversation, or just the pacing of the conversation is slowed way down because we have to keep bouncing back and forth between dialogue. Kate's going to read an example of what this looks like, but it can happen in many different cases, and a lot of times I see it in cases of like doubt, like one character doubting the other character, of like, you know, you said this before. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. What did you mean by that? I don't know what I meant. Are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure I don't know what I meant. It's like at that point, it's like, wait, what was the beginning of this conversation? You almost have to backtrack to like the beginning of the conversation to ask yourself like, wait, what were they talking about again? And then at that point, it's like your brain is so fatigued trying to keep up with this.
I see what they're talking about now, and it does make sense. I used to read a lot of books. I don't read very much at all now, but I used to read a shit ton of books, so I know what they're talking about. I don't know if that ever annoyed me, but you see that in books from time to time, where they say, like they were saying, you know, you just went to the store yesterday. No, I didn't. It was Tuesday. No, it was yesterday because I remember asking you to pick me up some tomatoes. You asked me to pick up some tomatoes on Tuesday. No, it was yesterday. No, it wasn't. It was Tuesday. And I just keep going back and forth. I see what they're saying, and then just you forget what the hell they're talking about. Oh, and then you have to read back and go back and say, oh, they're talking about going to the store. He says he went on Tuesday. She's saying he went yesterday. She's saying she asked him to pick up tomatoes yesterday, and he's saying, no, you asked me to pick up tomatoes on Tuesday. So yeah, it gets old. Back and forth gets a little old. It's a little annoying. And like she said, you have to kind of go back just to remember what the hell they're talking about.
Back and forth dialogue that it's like loses the meaning.
Right, it can start to lose the momentum of the conversation.
Yeah.
It
Right.
loses the forward motion. It sort of feels like we're just aimlessly drifting without a clear trajectory of where we're going in the conversation. How is it supposed to move forward? We're just sort of in this limbo and we're stuck there and we're sort of wanting to skip forward in 10-second increments if it was something we were watching.
Right.
So a weak example using, what we're discussing here. I look up from my book. Hey, can I ask you something? Sure, what? William asks. I was just thinking about tomorrow's test. And? I sigh. I feel a bit nervous. Nervous? William grunts. Are you kidding? No, seriously. No one has studied harder than you have, Kim. So we have a lot of back and forth here.
And repeating words.
Repeating words.
That's another
almost
thing to catch yourself
repeating
doing.
information because we're not quickly moving forward. We're still trying to ascertain. This?
That's fair
No,
enough.
really this? Oh, okay. It's not really going anywhere. There's a remark, a question about the remark.
Yeah.
A
It's kind of
question in reply to a question. And it's
kind
just
of
that
the
ping
verbal
pong feeling.
Exactly. It's kind of like the verbal equivalent of zigzagging instead of going in a straight line.
Right.
Like you're still moving forward, sort of, but at slower increments because you're zigzagging back and forth in this conversation.
So unless you are very specifically writing someone exhibiting avoidance behavior, maybe a character on purpose trying to not talk about something. Let's say it's like a spy scenario and they're trying to, weasel their way out of a conversation, then it would make sense because it would have a purpose. But if this is just an everyday conversation between two characters and there's no reason for avoidance to be happening, we have to ask ourselves, is there a more concise, clear, crisp way that this conversation could be carried on, that this dialogue could be exchanged?
Right.
So now a strong example of the same dialogue exchange. I look up from my book. Hey, can I ask you something? Sure, what? William asks. I can't stop thinking about tomorrow's test. I'm so nervous. He grunts. No one has studied harder than you have, Kim. So here we have a much more concise exchange happening between these two characters in which the meaning of the conversation is being conveyed more quickly.
Yeah.
We were able to...
twice as, or half the amount of words.
It's literally half the amount of lines of dialogue. It went from being, I think, 8 lines.
Yeah, 8 lines of dialogue to 4 lines of dialogue.
Yeah, 8 lines to 4.
So much tighter and better.
And when you're thinking about in terms of, it might not seem like a lot for a very small exchange like this, but when you're looking at an entire novel, that really significantly changes how loose or how tight your writing is. It's going to really tighten up your writing. It's going to quicken the pacing. Readers are going to be able to get through it faster and grasp your meaning more efficiently.
Right.
When you have tighter dialogue. And when you look at, all you have to do is think of what is the actual meaning of this conversation. What is exactly trying to be conveyed in this exchange? For this one, what's trying to be conveyed is Kim confessing that she's nervous about the test. If we can say something concisely in 1 line, we don't need to say it in 3 unless there's a purpose for it being said in 3. Like, your character is fearful of the outcome of the conversation. Your character doesn't really want to share this information. It sort of depends. If you're dragging out a conversation, you have to have a reason for dragging it out.
Right.
And it needs to be clear to your reader, oh, I see why they're delaying. I see that delay tactic. I see why they're trying to beat around the bush. But if we're confused, we don't see why they're beating around the bush. It's just taking forever for this conversation to happen. We start to get bored after a while. That's one of the main things that can make your dialogue start to drag.
Yeah, very true. Third, relying on dialogue to communicate emotions. Like single-handedly, we are delivering every character's emotion and feeling and what they are excited or angry or passionate about through their dialogue. Like if they don't say these words out loud exactly how they feel, the reader won't know what your character feels. Which to me and Kate, this is a sign of like weak writing in general, because if you have to make your characters say what they're feeling in order for your reader to know what they're feeling, it's like, well, we're not really in their head then, are we? We're not really like in their skin. We can't really see what's going on internally if they have to, say exactly how they feel. And a lot of times when you have a character who just comes out and says exactly how they feel about something, it can come out sounding forced and kind of cheesy, especially if it's their internal conflict that they are kind of self-observing as if they're their own therapist.
Right. Right. So utilizing all of your toolkit here to see that there's many other ways that you can share the emotions of the character and communicate those emotions without them spelling it out in dialogue. Of course, there are times when it's appropriate for characters to share their feelings.
Yeah.
But we don't want to info dump too soon or too quickly or for reasons that are unclear, because it can come across feeling like we really didn't know how else to communicate this, so here it is. They're going to just say it because we're not sure how to make you see what this character is struggling with. So we don't have to fully, and it's interesting because this plays into very much into the dialogue tags. How are we tagging the dialogue? How are we interjecting emotion and action and reaction to spice up the conversation? One of my favorite things about film and the whole cinematic side of things is being able to watch actors. So much of their acting is little changes in the eyes and the face expression, and even silent gaps in the conversation that say more than what's actually being verbally said. And I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. But in written word, we don't have that. So what can we do? We can use the gaps. I want you to think of the gaps are in the tags. What we're doing in between those lines is really what we're seeing in that movie in our heads.
Yeah. Reading between the lines.
Exactly. Literally. So a weak example of this. Loretta looks down at her shoes. I hate to be the one to tell you, but Spencer left town days ago. He told me not to tell you. I stare at her, flabbergasted. What? No, that's not possible. Spencer would never walk out like that. Not without telling me first. This can't be true. So here what we have happening is pure communication of the emotions of the character through what they're verbally saying. So obviously we have someone who is flabbergasted. Their world is being rocked by this person leaving town.
Right. But we don't see like any of the body language.
Right.
Or any of like
all
the
of
internal emotions is always
Right.
like projected through the words.
It's all being projected through the words, which in some cases is appropriate.
Right.
You want to strike a balance here, because we talk all the time about showing instead of telling.
Right.
Dialogue can be a great way to show instead of tell, but it can also deprive your reader of being able to see some of these emotions playing out through the body language of that character.
Yeah.
And these are one of the things that can be a little bit tricky, like I said, when you're working with written word, not something that's being portrayed in a film or a TV series. It's like we can't see that actor. We have to sort of create what like cues would you give to an actor if they were acting out this scene, and then maybe inject those same cues into your character now. So switching over to a strong example of the same piece of dialogue. Loretta looks down at her shoes. I hate to be the one to tell you, but Spencer left days ago. He told me not to tell you. My eyes widen as I stare at her, the room seeming to spin around me. That's not possible, I whisper, catching myself against the door frame. He'd never leave without telling me. So here we have all, she's saying a lot less, this character,
First person present
in response.
Am I
There's
trying to write
quite a
something?
few, there's way fewer words that they're actually speaking. But we're seeing more of the reaction in between.
A lot of things are written that way nowadays. First person present tense. I might try to write something in first person present tense. I would have to kind of stick to YA, although not my first book I wrote is an adult book for sure. It was a romantic thriller, filled with all kinds of dirty words and wordy words and all sorts of. I'd say the book I'm working on now is YA. It's a historical fiction. No curse words whatsoever. No sex scenes. Well, one sex scene was very fade to black.
No wonder it's all smiles around here. Early dinner deals make for the happiest hours. With classics like crispy and breaded chicken, rich home
Oh, sorry.
and more.
The lines, which is not only enhancing the words being said, but it's enhancing our experience of watching this unfold. It's emphasizing and underlining the fact that this is a world-shaking experience for this character that this person has left.
It's also giving you a better chance to be in like deep point of view
And, like,
because you're
check
feeling
your
what the
words.
character is feeling. And sometimes, especially with books that are written in third person, I find when I'm reading a book that's written in third person and it doesn't have a lot of internal reaction or body language, or especially with the character's feeling inside, I sometimes forget whose point of view I'm even reading. And I'm like, wait, okay, whose head am I in now? Because we've kind of detached from the inner world and we're just seeing.
That's something I've never understood. Head hopping. A lot of author-tubers have talked about head hopping, switching from one head to another. I don't understand how that works. Maybe they'll explain it here.
in the outer world and we're just hearing what they're saying. And like Kate said, this is a balance that you have to like find, okay, what are some moments that it makes sense for this character to go on and on in dialogue about how they feel, and what are some instances where we want to take it back to the heart and soul of what's happening inside this character so that we feel like we are them and we know what's going on inside of them and we kind of feel what it feels like to be them. And those are important questions to ask because that's what immerses your reader in this deep point of view where they feel like they become the character and they're not just watching from like this omniscient perspective and hearing these different characters talking to each other. We can actually feel what they're feeling.
Right. And it's finding that balance between what they're saying and what they're actually projecting with their body. Especially since not all characters are going to be the same. Not all of your characters are going to be comfortable with saying exactly what they feel. You might be writing a very introverted or reserved person, and that person wouldn't project exactly what they feel in that moment. Most people don't. So we want to really tune into what other ways would they reveal what they're feeling in that moment when a person's face expression betrays them or their body language shifts just that little bit and you know the tone and mood of the conversation has changed. What are those little things? And it can help also watching films, at least this is something that's always helped me and I know it helps Abby as well, is to watch great acting and see and notice those little shifts, those emotional changes that enhance the dialogue and take it to that next level.
Yeah.
It's what makes it so much different than if you had your eyes closed and you were listening to the dialogue versus watching it, and how it makes it so much more powerful. That's because we're seeing that body language. We're watching that emotional journey taking place on those characters' faces, and we can actually translate that into written word and insert it into our dialogue to make it that much more next level. It really takes it to the next level.
Yeah, it does. I saw a post one time that was specifically about writing romance, but it applies to anything. And it said, if you have to make your characters say, I love you to know that they're in love, then you haven't written the romance well enough. And that really applies to any type of storytelling, whether it's romance or something else. The bottom line of that piece of advice is that you don't, if you need your characters to come out and say verbatim exactly what they're feeling so that the reader knows what they're feeling, then consider going back and looking for places where you can actually insert moments of self-realization for them and body language, the internal turmoil that they're dealing with, their internal conflict, and some of the things that they're thinking and feeling on a daily basis. All those little moments are what build up to this understanding of what they want, what they are afraid of, what they believe. All their internal conflict is tied up in that. So it's like, if you find yourself having to spell it out in dialogue, then that's a sign that you have to go back and strengthen the rest of the story. And then you'll find that you don't have to spell it out in dialogue because it's obvious.
Right, exactly. And it's great too because this is something you can ask yourself too in the editing process.
Right.
A lot of this is going to take place in the editing process. As writers, we know how much we each play with the dialogue as we go back through the editing process. And so you can really use these different methods as tools in your toolkit for not only the creative writing process, but also the editing process to really make your novel shine.
Yeah, so true. Don't fret about it too much in the first draft. The first draft does not have to
Don't fret about anything in the first draft.
just let it be a free flow of creativity. But hopefully these 3 tips are things that you can put in your toolkit right now and use in the future as you're writing dialogue and as you're editing dialogue and doing rewrites. Remember these 3 things. Avoid repetitive tags by inserting more action into your dialogue. Avoid too much
I personally don't write more than one draft. I just write it out, and then I'll go through it and then change what I want to change as I go back through it. And then once I've gone through it a couple or a few times and corrected what I want to correct each time, I read through it again and make sure there's nothing I want to change. If there's anything I want to change, I change it again. But then after 3 or 4 times of reading through it and making changes, I shouldn't want to make any more changes. Now, the problem with reading your manuscript too often is
Everyone is short story long. It's as bad as they come. A connected, funded sociopath with resources to make things complicated.
there was no way sometimes, unless you're writing in third omniscient, that the narrator can know certain things. I don't know why I thought about that, but that just popped in my head to say that. But it's true. Sometimes when you're writing in third person, there's things the narrator can't know. You have to remember that. That's why I write in third omniscient, because if I want to write what a person's feeling that's not, I guess that could be head hopping when you write about someone that's feeling a certain way that's not your character you're focused on.
I have a friend at the Pentagon.
And I think there's third person deep. I don't know exactly what that means. I gotta ask my phone. They'll just say, here are the top searches. Hey Google, what does third person deep mean in writing?
According to Writing Mastery Academy, the deep third-person POV is intimate, almost as much so as the first-person point of view, but remains in third person, using pronouns such as he, she, or they. The narrator holds nothing back from the reader when exposing the character's inner life.
All right. It's like third person omniscient, but you don't know all. You're not all knowing and all being the narrator. You can, Google said the narrator can, relay deep feelings of the character, but he doesn't know all, like third person omniscient. Third person omniscient is, if I'm saying omniscient, I've heard people say omniscient. I think it's omniscient. But third person omniscient is the narrator knows all. If there's a dog in the script, the narrator knows what the dog's thinking and what it wants. If there's a horse, the dog knows if the horse is happy or mad or sad, whatever. The narrator knows everything about everything going on. So the narrator has magic powers to know everything. If there's a snake,
Hey, how about we all head to Italy this summer? We've always talked about going back.
all right. What's this say? Avoid repetitive tags by inserting more action into your dialogue. 2. Avoid too much back and forth by keeping your dialogue more concise and to the point. Don't rely solely on dialogue to communicate your character's emotions. Also use body language and introspection. Alright, I don't know what that means. You probably do though. Congratulations.
Back and forth by keeping your dialogue more concise and to the point. And don't rely only on dialogue to communicate your character's emotions. Also, let your characters have body language and internal thoughts and feelings and struggles that show what they're feeling.
Introspection. That's what.
Hopefully you took some notes during this episode. We would love to hear from
I did not.
you guys. So join the discussion, comment below this video, tell us what you thought of this topic. We would love to hear your thoughts on dialogue. What do you think makes dialogue really powerful and engaging, and what?
I personally like dialogue that seems real. I like dialogue that flows, that seems real, that moves the story along, and seems natural. That's how I try to write dialogue. I think I do it pretty well. I definitely move the story forward with my dialogue. That's why it's considered showing and not telling, I think. So, I guess we're done with the Abby and her sister Kate. Kate and Abby. Let's see. Let's get rid of this, and I guess we're gonna hang it up in a second. And show you my tits. No, I'm kidding. I'll show you my tits if you want to see them. They're huge. Falsely Towers, 3 episodes. We could watch that. Jim Morrissey. What's the last thing she did? That'd be fun to watch.
What are some of those things?
Another Jim Morrissey video. See what Jim Morrissey has. Alright, here we go. We're done. Peace.